With most products, you usually get two choices: Coke or Pepsi, Samsung or Apple, Ford or Chevy, or Toyota or Honda or Mazda or Audi or Tesla. Or cars are different in the way that there's so many brands to choose from, like a lot of brands. This always confused me as a kid. Listen, my dad is a car dealer, so I grew up around so many different kinds of cars, so you would assume that I just intuitively knew that Hyundai owned 34% of Kia, which is the majority share due to a bankruptcy purchase in the 90s, but no. So this guide is as much for me as it is for you. Here is every car brand explained. Most car guys will probably have way more to share in the comments, and I'm sure they'll get mad at some of these explanations. So prepare to see a ton of actuallys. Also, I'm just focusing on the brands that you will actually see in the United States of America, because if I had to talk about all the Chinese brands, we would be here all day. Especially since they all suck. We're gonna split the car brands into three different groups. First, the Asian brands. The first one is Toyota. They're the biggest and most popular brand from Japan. Their big competitor is Honda, and another competitor is Nissan. Now, the Japanese cars are usually known for being super reliable and fuel efficient, which is great, but back in the 80s, Honda wanted to get invited to the cool cars club. That's why each of these brands that I just listed all have a secret. Each of them has an alter ego. So buckle in, this is where it starts getting complicated. Take out your notes. Honda created Acura as their luxury line of vehicles.
From a new division of American Honda, exclusively at Acura dealers.
So it's a Honda car, but it's made to seem more upscale and luxurious. For example, Bruce Wayne would never be seen driving a Honda, but an Acura, probably still not. But I mean, closer. Toyota and Nissan didn't want to be left in the dust, so Toyota created Lexus as their luxury line of vehicles, and Nissan created Infiniti as their luxury line of vehicles. So each of these luxury brands are just subsidiaries of the original brand. On top of this, Nissan also owns part of Mitsubishi, while Toyota has stakes in Subaru and Mazda, which are also from Japan. Also, Ford used to own Mazda, but kind of gave up custody. So Mazda partially went to Toyota for some money, but also still independent. And guys, I'm really trying. This is really not straightforward. The other Asian brands you'll see in the United States are from South Korea, where Hyundai reigns supreme. Hyundai owns the majority of Kia, so they share a lot of similarities with their cars. And boom, that's it with the Asian brands. Okay, we're done. America time. So there are three big companies we're going to focus on in the United States. Ford. Yeah, I know what that is. GM. I think I've heard the name. And Stellantis. Atlantis? Each of these companies owns so many different brands. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle or like a dodgeball lineup, and each of them are team captains and they all just chose randomly. Whatever. Let's do it. So Ford owns Ford. They make Mustangs, which you might see as its own logo, but it's still just a Ford car. They also make Lincoln, which is their alter ego in the Cool Cars Club. It's kind of funny that they're both presidents, but whatever. Guys, Ford was like a foster parent for so many car brands because it used to own Mazda, Jaguar, Volvo, Land Rover, Mercury, which it kind of took out the back and discontinued. The second company we're going to talk about is General Motors, which is also known as GM, which is the parent company of Chevy or Chevrolet. Chevy is their main brand, but they also run GMC. I don't know how they came up with that one. Yeah, I got nothing. They also do Cadillac, which is the Chevrolet luxury brand. I'm telling you, almost every brand has some alter ego stuff, so just start memorizing. But GM also owns Buick, which is kind of like supposed to be luxury, but it kind of just feels like the brand that Cadillac had to bring to the Cool Cars Club because it was stuck babysitting. Before we get to the last one, I need to mention a couple other American brands that mostly do electric vehicles. You guys all probably know what a Tesla is, but there's also Rivian, Lucid, and Fisker, which are all watching the constant boxing match between GM and Ford. The last American company is Stellantis. It's kind of like the hive mind of car brands, but you'll see how this works. So alongside Ford and Chevy, Chrysler used to be considered among like the big three in the United States. But Chrysler is now owned by Stellantis, which is kind of like the Disney brand for automobiles that just owns everything. Stellantis owns Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram, which are all historic American brands. They're also known for making this thing called the subscribe button. It's below the video, please. These four brands share a lot of similarities in the way that they're built, but since these four American brands are owned by a company based in the Netherlands, it's Europe time. Apart from owning those four American brands, Stellantis also owns Fiat, which runs Abarth. It's named Abarth because when you see a Fiat, you usually just want to barf anyway, so Maserati and Alfa Romeo. You don't see as many of these in the United States, but I figured they're worth mentioning because I used to own an Alfa Romeo and I needed an excuse to put these pictures up on the screen. Other European brands include BMW, which owns Mini. Mercedes-Benz is the big rival of BMW, which is so cool it doesn't even need an alter ego to get into this super crowded analogy. Volkswagen definitely seems like the brand that didn't get invited to hang with the big kids at German recess, but then at night it turns into a Lamborghini and fights crime because for some unholy reason Volkswagen owns Lamborghini. Volkswagen runs Audi as its luxury brand and also Porsche. The last ones I'll bring up here are Land Rover and Jaguar, which are owned by the same company in England. I guess there's also Volvo, which is a Swedish company, but it was owned by Ford, but now it's owned by a Chinese company, and I swear we do not have time for China. So we have these three groups, the Asian, American, and European brands. I'd like to propose a super generic rule to sort these brands. It is called the function fashion grid. So the European brands are all gonna go up and to the right. They are the most cool and the least reliable. I brought up my Alfa Romeo earlier. I actually sold it because our mechanic said, hey, this specific model, it'll give out at 50,000 miles. Now, obviously, how reliable your car is depends on how well you maintain it and a bunch of other factors. But just as a general rule, the European cars just are not built to last. But dang, do they look cool. I generally feel like the American ones fall in the middle of the function fashion grid. The American ones can usually last longer than the European ones, but they also aren't nearly as cool. This is more so for the big three brands, by the way. The EV cars are a little different. And the Asian ones are world-renowned for being the most reliable. Toyota and Honda are usually up there for like the most reliable brands in the world. For the most part, they're not as expensive or cool as the European ones, but they usually are way more reliable. Usually. Like I said, this is a super generic rule. There's a lot of examples of super cool looking Asian cars, and there's also some European cars that can be pretty reliable. But this is just a super generic rule, and honestly, it helps me just sort through all these brands because there's so many. That's all the automotive brands that you'll usually see in the United States. So, if you'll excuse me, I have to go to this cool cars club.